There is many reasons why people would buy a SURRON Light BX, but for me personally, the most interesting reason is for the wheelies. Which is why today we're going to be having a wheelie progression session. We're going to see how good I've got my wheelies after 6 months of owning a SURRON. And I'm also going to talk about a few tips that will help you get wheeling on your own SURRON. So without further ado, let's get straight into some wheelies. So I have recently been practicing my wheelies a little bit, as you might be able to tell. I can finally get the front wheel to stay up for longer than about 2 seconds. I have owned a SURRON for roughly around 6 months now. So finally getting used to how the bike rides and how we should be riding the bike. I'm not in the most ideal place for doing some wheelies today, but the one spot I had in mind, I sort of had to knock on the head. But finally, I hit a bump. That's the one thing about today's spot that's really annoyed me. I had to come to the field where there's loads of sheep poo and rocks and things in the way, so it's not going to be an easy ride. It will make the wheelies a bit more interesting, but hopefully, like you can tell, I finally found that balance point. I finally found the point where I can let the bike sort of balance on its own. I can keep the front wheel up for quite a while now, and this has just basically been through sheer practice of basically just trying wheelies over and over and over again. So the way I came about this was one of the other Sunday mornings I was out. I didn't really have anywhere interesting to go or interesting to ride, so I spent pretty much a pure hour of just trying wheelies, finding that balance point, getting used to throttle control. My back brake is at the point now where it needs bleeding and probably some new pads, because I've just been purely sat on that back brake, slowing down, starting back up, trying to get that wheel up in the air. But every now and then I do get a few good ones, I do get a few poor ones. But with doing wheelies, there's been a few tips which has helped me along the way, and that mainly has been just confidence. The main thing I want to talk about is confidence. It does take a while for you to get to that point where you're confident enough to just lean on the back wheel, lean that little bit further back, let the accelerator take you a bit further back than you want. But once you've done it, once you've found that point, that's when you know that you can basically get the wheel up in the air and continue to come along and do some good wheelies. Obviously, something people talk about a lot when talking about wheelies is, that's a word you're going to be hearing a lot today, by the way, wheelies is the key word for the video, is that back brake control as well. When you feel yourself going that little bit too far back, you've got to hit that back brake as quick as possible, but not to the point where you bring the wheel down. You want to be hitting the back brake just about enough to balance yourself back out. Then you want to use the throttle to pick the wheel straight back up, and that's going to help you out a lot. So as you probably saw in that one, I was starting to get a bit quick, but I was still at the point where the throttle was keeping the wheel in the air for me. It does get to the point now where I end up getting too fast and end up turning it into a bit of a power wheelie, which is what I was constantly doing before. But I wasn't holding them up in the air anywhere near as much as before, so definitely got that down a bit better. I do keep twisting the front wheel when I get up in the air, and I don't know why. That doesn't really help, because when you land, you're probably gonna land at an angle, could end up going over the handlebars. So something else I want to talk about that's helped my wheelies out, rather than trying to look down at the front wheel while I'm trying to pull my wheelies, is having your head straight forwards and looking at the horizon in front of you. That's just been helping me sort of get the bike up and leaning back and concentrating on where I'm going rather than what the actual bike's doing. That will also help you bring the bike up a bit further than you'd like it to, maybe. Not to the point where you're going to end up looping it, but to the point where you find that balance point a lot quicker and a lot easier. And again, it's just having that back brake control to throw it back down once you do feel like you're going too far. Again, ended up getting a bit too quick, but keeping the wheel up so much better than I last was. As you've probably heard in other videos, the ideal place to start learning to wheelie would be on a patch of grass like what is in front of me. The only annoying thing about trying to learn on grass is it's hard to find a grassy area that is perfectly flat and doesn't have loads of lumps and bumps in it, or a load of sheep crap like I've got today. Trying to find that perfect bit of grass that's out the way of everybody and is flat enough for you to actually be confident on getting your wheel up is pretty hard to find. So next to me is pretty much where I actually started trying to learn to wheelie, on this grass patch right here. To be honest, I should be trying on this part because this part's way smoother, but right next to me is actually where I started trying to learn to wheelie properly. It's where I sort of gave it a go while I was on grass, and it was a big help. I just struggled with how lumpy and bumpy it was. It's alright to getting used to sort of leaning back, but if you actually want to continue on your back wheel with your front wheel up in the air, it's pretty hard even on ground like this. It's not ideal for actually keeping it up. That's why you see so many people who do wheelie SURRONs. They're always on the streets. They're not really on off-road bits, popping a wheelie, going over dirt and lumpy ground. I mean, ideally this bit of concrete here is so much better. I'm actually gonna start using this bit instead, I think. Towards the end of that wheelie I was just completely full throttle, and it just wasn't keeping the bike up anymore. That's because I wasn't leaning back enough. So this is the other location that I was talking about, which is so much better for wheelies. You see why I think it's a perfect location. You just got a complete straight run. I tend to stick to this end because the other end is somewhat of an active airfield, but I basically stick to this bit of tarmac, and it's a perfect place just to practice throwing that wheel up. Nearly looped it. Something I did do to the bike, which if you watch my previous videos you'll know all about. I did change my sprocket, so I changed to a bigger sprocket on the back, giving us less top speed, slightly less top speed, but a lot more torque. And that basically allows us just to get a better leading edge on keeping that back wheel up, having a bit of fun. Definitely helps you out with the wheelies, definitely gives you a bit more power to pretty much throw it up and keep it back. I'm turned into really bad ones for some reason now. Just got to keep practicing and keep practicing though. And this is why my brakes are so whacked, because I basically keep getting some speed and then slowing right down. I should probably let the regen slow me down a bit rather than let the brakes do the work. And before I was just relying completely on my back brake to do it all, so I should probably start using the front a bit more. I used to think my front brake was really bad, like that's me squeezing the front brake fully. You see people doing stoppies, that is literally my front brake completely on. I have no idea how people do stoppies, especially if your brake's like that. So for the last part of this video, I think we're going to head on down to the other part of this airfield that I like to practice my wheelies again. It's got a bit of an incline. It's another nice bit of a tarmac road, exactly the same as this. Let's give it a full speed test while we're going down here. Speedo saying 44, 47, 48, 49, 48. That's completely flat out. You're not going to get any faster than that. Slightly downhill now. So again, that's with the bike having a sprocket upgrade. I'm actually going to, and again, this is one of my other wheelie spots. This is where I like to get a bit of practice in. See, already coming so much better, but I'm still in the wind a bit, so it's actually pulling me around a bit. Much better. I don't know what it was about that spot that I went to. Maybe it's because I was hating on it before, saying how much I hated that I was at the first spot I went to. It was like, now you've come to this spot, I'm actually not going to be as good as what you think. If I was good at wheelies, I'd be able to wheelie anywhere. So in the future, I'm definitely going to be doing some more wheelie progression sessions. You're bound to see me do more wheelies in future videos anyway, because it's something I just love doing on the bike. But I will make specific videos on them, on the progression we're making, how far we've come. If you watch my previous videos and you saw where I last tried wheelies, you will realise I've actually come quite far, and how bad those original ones were that I was doing. I was maybe making 6 foot, 7 foot on the floor and thinking that I was pretty boss at wheelies, but now I've found that better balance point. Definitely getting better at them. So according to the speedo there, I was getting up to 32 miles an hour whilst doing a wheelie, which reality is going to be about 25, I would have thought. Definitely doesn't quite feel like wheeling at 30 miles an hour, but it just shows that you can get the bike wheeling quite quick speeds. And once you find that balance point, you can just basically keep the bike going. Even if you are going quick, it will just stay up in the air. So like that one, I managed to just about save it a bit when it was starting to go down, even though we were going quite quick. The bike still had enough oomph in it to just pull me back up. That's more like it. That was the balance point. I think on the bad ones that I've been doing in this video, that's where I've been struggling. I was not letting the balance point carry me. Again, that comes back to what I was first saying on confidence. Even though you think you've got it down and you think you've got to the point where you're doing good wheelies all the time, you can lose that little bit of confidence on leaning back. And if you don't accelerate straight away and get yourself up to that good balance point, it's hard to carry on the bike getting you there, which is definitely what I struggled with when I first started doing wheelies. I wasn't allowing the bike to pick up enough for a start to keep me up in the air. I was sort of relying on the throttle to keep me up, and that's why they turn into power wheelies all the time. Just started to go a bit far back on that one, but managed to touch the brake just in time. I'm really looking forward to getting some new brake pads and bleeding the brakes on this. I know I've mentioned it a few times in the video, but I don't know what it is about the stock brakes. I don't know if I've just mistreated them and not serviced them enough for the time I've had the bike. I don't know if they're just rubbish and wear down really quick, but when I first got them they really weren't so bad. But over time they've just gone downhill and downhill and downhill, and obviously they're brakes, they're going to, but they really declined quickly as of recently. For a good while they were managing alright and they were stopping me instantly and like at least locking up the wheels, whereas recently they've not been doing that. So I've probably been out for a good hour already on the bike, pretty much just doing wheelies apart from my small travel to where the spot is that I'm at. And the bike is on 75% battery, which is pretty good going considering. I definitely sometimes think it dies down quicker than it should do. But I think part of that was I had to balance the battery cells. Even though I was charging up to 100, I was pretty much taking the bike off charge as soon as it stopped. But I read up online on some people saying that you want to leave the bike on charge for another hour or two after it said it's finished at 100%, and that will just balance out the cells that haven't quite actually got what the battery that it says it has. And after I did that, after I left it on charge for a good couple of 3 hours, after it said it was on 100%, it tended to last a bit longer. But I think I've definitely noticed a decline in the battery in the 500 odd miles that I've had the bike. When I first had it and I was going out on rides, it seemed to last so long, whereas now I'll do a mile or two and I would have used 5%, whereas before it was maybe 1 or 2%. Nearly looped that one, but I didn't press the brake, I just let the bike come down itself. That was kind of strange. Because I've still got regen on the bike, that tends to happen as well. I just let the regen braking pull me down. Not on purpose, but it just happens sometimes. If you are learning to wheelie, that's something you want to look at, is the regen on the bike, whether you're going to want that on or not. If you're learning, it's probably a good idea to keep it on if you've turned it off. And then your brake sensors, like I didn't have to turn mine off, mine just came so I could accelerate and brake at the same time. So I'm pulling the brake and accelerating, pulling the brake and accelerating. I know a lot of people, when they first get their bikes, the brake sensors are set so when you do press the brakes it just cuts off the motor completely. Mine has never done that for some reason. I don't know if it's because it's a fairly newer bike and they stopped making it a sort of default setting, or whether I just got the bike set up differently from where I bought it from. It was brand new with 0 miles on it, so I doubt anyone would have changed the setup of the bike before I owned it. Rather than having to cut the sensors, you can turn it off with the little cable connector that you get. You plug that cable connector to the battery and to the bike, and you can basically change it with, I think it's the front brake lever, acts as a button. There's different button sequence that you press. So say you press the front brake 4 times and then hold it once for a long one to show that the code's complete, then that will do something to the bike. It's all different sequences that do different things. One to do with regen, one to do with the brake sensors, one to do with the kickstand sensor, which I've still left mine on. There's a few different things that you can mess around with. So that then brings us to the end of the wheelie progression session on the SURRON today. If you've liked this video and you want to see more of this content, drop a comment down below so I know that you've liked watching this video and you want to see more wheelie progression sessions. Like this video so YouTube knows that you like watching my video. If you are new to the channel and you like this sort of content, subscribe to the channel for more to come in the future. I've been Matt Francis, I'm signing out. Peace.